Good afternoon, everybody. This is OTC. I trade with Bearable Traders Community, and this is my live trade recap of SQ. Before we run into the video, let's just take a look at the graph here and take a look at the action today. So you can see the opening range break was a downward sell-off to the 50 SMA on the 5, and then the next 5-minute candle came up, pressed back to the pre-market high a day. Now this would have been a really tough candle to trade off of, right? Because it pushed all the way up and then came back down. But the fact that it closed above the pre-market high of day would have been a good bullish sign for someone to enter and take this big move up here. I was not watching this ticker that intently, but what I did catch, and I noticed later in the day, is after it had made this move up, there's the first high of day, right? Then it broke a high of day but could not hold it, right? So, and what I noticed was it was consolidating here, and it consolidated for, you could say, is the better part of 2 hours, 10 to 12 roughly there, that it consolidated. And I noticed that, and then noticed later, I thought, okay, I missed this move, but then it came back down and thought, okay, well, this thing's going to come back down and continue to chop around in that range, but it didn't. It had a, let's go over to the 1 minute. So that was, let's scroll in here. So that was this candle here, right? This one right here. So look at the volume. Climactic volume, exhaustive volume into a moving average, so the 200 SMA, and then it bounced. So I missed that bounce, but there's your A, B, C, where I got in, and your D. So at that point, when I saw that, after consolidating and holding, as I mentioned, this level of 167.50 roughly for almost 2 hours, or a little bit over 2 hours, I thought, okay, this thing can go break high a day again. There's a lot of people accumulating their position here, the hedge funds, the market makers, the insiders accumulating their position, and then it tends to bounce. And I trade SQ quite a bit and seen it do that often. So had not retraced, back down after so many hours. It had not retraced back down and done a big move to the downside. So sure enough, there was an opportunity to catch it for a further move up. So that was the strategy, and then the overlook. But the strategy was an ABCD pattern, a 5-minute ABCD pattern, and hold into the break a high a day. And sure enough, that's what I caught. So let's just minimize this a little bit and then run the video. So you'll notice here that I got in a little late. This is not the right video. That one isn't either. Give me a second here. That one isn't either. Good. That is this one, so we can't watch that. That's INTC, so sorry about that. So we'll just stick with this. I don't know what I did with the actual video, but you'll notice here that my entry, as I mentioned, was during this accumulation phase. My first entry of 25% of my position was a bad fill at the top of the range, waited for it to come to the bottom of the range. Didn't get it at the bottom there, but notice that none of these these wicks had overtaken even the 50 SMA, and they were still holding this intraday level of the range, right, that I have drawn in. The bodies were all closing above, so I took the position on this one, closed a little lower than me, and then I could have probably added a little more here, but I was in at 100% tier 1 and tier 2 of my position. Then if we look at the R calculator, so my stop loss was the loss of this candle here and the loss of the 100. So basically there my position was 75% weighted towards this green triangle here on entry. So it would have been maybe, let's just move it a little higher, about a third of the way up. So let's say this is my entry, this is my stop loss. My first partial was at 1R, 2R, 3R. The 100 is my break even, so this is 3R. So my first partial was almost at 4R. My second partial was, this would be 5, almost at 6R. And then what happened was I took, so these were small partials. These were either 10s or 20%. So I think this one was a 10% and then this one was 25%, if I recall correctly. But then what occurred was, let's look at the 5 minute again, right? That third partial, which was, let's delete this guy, calc the R, see if we can click on it just right, scroll in a little more. Okay. The third partial, which was here, look at this candle. You've got a hanging man. And a hanging man here is considered a bearish candlestick pattern, right? So I saw that hanging man form and I decided to exit almost 75%, or it was 75% of my remaining position there. In hindsight, you know, that was a technical candle that I don't like to see, so probably a good idea, but could have also waited to see if that candle finished as a hanging man before taking the partial. So needs improvement there to not take what I like to call a panic partial, right? Panic partials are partials that I take based on P&L. I did it with the mentality of locking in profits. I had already moved my stop loss to break even. So whatever I had here and had here, I had locked in. Anything else, if this thing came up, I got those partials, I locked in 10%, 25%, then I would have just been all out at break even, still would have been green on the P&L. So this partial here on P&L was not good. If I would have taken it solely on the fact that it was a hanging man, I probably should have waited for this candle to form to see how it developed. It closed at a higher high, so maybe wouldn't have taken it. I was scheduled to take a partial there because of this level, and then noticed that it was starting to show weakness on the 5, so I took another partial here. So go back to this view. So those are these two partials, whereas the panic partial was 1, 2. This was the panic partial. Then my next partial was scheduled to be right there at that range break, right? So I put it right in front. And then the next partial, again, another panic partial. This is just a consolidation there on low volume. But where is this? So this indecision type candle on higher volume here. Where was it? Right here on higher volume. I should have looked back to see what kind of volume there was comparative on the VPA, because I ended up taking another panic partial there as it was just consolidating to make the next move, and then finally did hold enough for the break of high a day. There's the last pop, break a high a day, and then throws that selling pressure type shooting star, if you will, or inverse doji for the move to the downside. So I didn't catch this move. One of our moderators was watching me trade this to the upside, and so he decided to take a short on it, and I missed it. Could have reversed my position, but had already gotten a great P&L out of this trade. Missed it, and then was watching him trade it live and noticed that, so this, if I would have entered here, this would have been a parabolic reversal on the 5. Basically it would have been back to the 9 EMA. So on the 5, this would be the 9 EMA, and that would be the parabolic reversal. But then I noticed that it was continuing that move, right? So let's look at the 5. Let's scroll in on the 5. So there's the 9 EMA. That's the parabolic reversal from here to here, all out, right? But I didn't enter there. I noticed that it had strength to break that, and so I took on that selling pressure, I took another entry, let's use the tiny pen, with the stop loss just above it. So if it came back and reclaimed itself, I would have been all out. And so I set this as a one and done trade. You can see here that I was all out at this portion here. So let's get the R calculator and see what that was. So my stop loss was literally a couple cents. So I was in for all or nothing on this one. So that was an 8R trade with a really tight stop loss. So added to my P&L. Could have been greedy, right, and put my stop loss to reach this 50 SMA, but didn't do so. I think actually I did the 50 SMA on the 1 minute. So let's just go right back to the 1 minute and scroll in there. And here is my entry, which the 50 SMA was right here, the 9 EMA was right here, and then so I basically wanted to see the move go all the way down to the 200 SMA. I must have set this order, yeah, you can see this push back up, so there must have been some big bids at this price level, and I set my order just above it to finish there. So that is my trade recap on SQ for today. First a long, then a short. In summary, give myself a grade of A on this trade and a grade of A on this trade because I'm trading setups that I like to see. The trade management was good in terms of recognizing what the setup was developing, the accumulation, the partial entry, and then the confirmation entry on the holds, taking big move up to the upside, but then panic partial there, and recognizing the ABCD pattern all the way to break of high a day. Being patient, not forcing a reversal, seeing that I had weakness to the downside, jumping in for another quick trade. So overall, really good trade. Humble brag. Not really sure what I could comment on that need improvement on, other than the usual that I always say is these panic partials that I'm taking based on P&L and not technical indicators. So that was my trade on SQ for today, and thank you for listening in, guys. Till the next one.